Good evening, dear listener. Tonight we are going to take you back to a historic event, a moment frozen in time, a story whispered by the sea itself. The Titanic stands proud, lights glowing, laughter spilling from its grand halls as the ocean gently carries her forward. The world above dreams of progress and power. The world below waits in silence. This is the calm before history changes forever. You step onto the deck of the Titanic on April 13th, 1912, breathing in the crisp Atlantic air as the ship hums with life. Passengers chat, children laugh, and the band plays a cheerful tune. But beneath the elegance, something feels off. A dismissed iceberg warning, a steward's hushed comment about the dropping temperature. What if you could sense the unspoken tension in those final hours of peace? Let us walk the corridors together, noticing the whispers of fate woven into this ordinary day. The sun begins to rise, casting soft golden streaks across the calm Atlantic. The air is cool and still, and the sky stretches wide, painted with pale hues of dawn. A steward tips his cap politely as you pass, and the scent of fresh sea air mixes with faint traces of polished wood and ocean spray. We observe the people excited for this huge trip to a country far, far away. Passengers stroll along the promenade, their footsteps muffled against the teak deck. A young couple pauses to admire the view. Nearby, an older gentleman, wrapped in a thick wool coat, reads his newspaper in the morning light. Laughter drifts from somewhere behind, delicate and fleeting. The ship breathes gently beneath your feet, the distant hum of engines steady and comforting. There is a subtle chill in the air this morning, sharper than yesterday, not quite the warmth one might expect in mid-April. A few passengers tug their collars closer, brushing it off as ocean weather. Yet just beyond the horizon, thin bands of fog begin to rise ghostly white, barely noticed through the calm. The ship itself gleams in the light, brass railings buffed to a shine, crisp white paint untouched by sea spray. A marvel of engineering, the Titanic feels invincible. In their diaries, some passengers write of their excitement of fine meals, glittering salons, and the promise of New York. It is like floating in a dream, one writes. On the second-class promenade, families tuck wool blankets around their legs as they watch the ocean slide past. A Methodist minister from Wisconsin marks his Bible with a faded ribbon while his wife knits. A few feet away, two teachers from London debate whether to take teaching posts in Chicago or Toronto. Their deck chairs creak gently with the large ship's movement. The sea stretches flat and glittering in all directions, an endless sheet of pale blue. A mother pulls her two daughters' coat tighter as a sudden breeze lifts the child's curls. "Hush now," she whispers, though the girl had not spoken. The mother's eyes scan the horizon where the sky meets water in a seamless line. There is no wind, no waves, just a peculiar weight to the air, like the moment before a summer storm. Her husband flips a page of his newspaper without looking up. The second-class areas offer modest comforts. A small oak-paneled library with Arthur Conan Doyle novels on the shelves. A smoking room where men play endless games of whist. Passengers write letters at the shared writing desks, their pens scratching against thick stationery. I fancy I can already see the Statue of Liberty. One young clerk writes to his parents in Devon. He licks the envelope and does not notice the ink smudging his white cuff. None of them have been shown the lifeboats. The single safety drill for second class was cancelled 2 days prior. Unnecessary, the steward had said. A boy kicks a wooden hoop down the corridor near the engine casing, his shoes leaving faint scuffs on the linoleum. His sister counts seagulls perched on the aft railing, though the birds abandoned the ship hours ago. Somewhere below, a crewman making rounds pauses at an unlatched porthole in the crew quarters. He reaches to fasten it, then hesitates. The metal feels unusually cold under his fingers. Through the glass, the ocean appears glassy too still for the North Atlantic in April. He thinks of the ice warnings stacked neatly in the bridge's metal inbox. One had mentioned a massive field of pack ice drifting further south than usual. "See anything interesting?" calls another steward, balancing a tray of empty teacups. The first man shakes his head. With one last glance at the horizon, he forces the porthole shut, the latch clicking like the safety on a revolver. The wind nips at your face as you step onto the second-class promenade. Families huddle in wool coats, clutching mugs of tea for warmth. Deck chairs line the walkway, occupied by teachers, shopkeepers, and ministers, all bound for new beginnings. A pair of young sisters giggle as they tuck a blanket around their mother's knees. "You are going to love Chicago," the woman tells them, adjusting the collar of her dress. Nearby, a minister marks his Bible with a ribbon, while his wife writes a postcard to send at the next port. The ship is splendid. Her pen scratches. And our quarters far nicer than expected. Beneath their feet, the engines hum steadily, their rhythm almost comforting. The deck feels solid safe. Second class offers modest comforts, a small library with leather-bound books, a smoking room where men play cards, and a dining saloon where fresh bread appears at every meal. A boy races past, his shoes squeaking against the polished deck. His father calls after him, then turns to his companion. "They say there is work in Detroit, good wages at the motor factories." Inside, the sounds of a piano drift from the common room. A dozen voices rise in song, singing the latest tune from London. Laughter spills into the corridor, where a young couple pauses to listen. "It is just like home," the woman sighs, leaning against her husband. One deck below, a sailor pauses mid-step, gripping the rail. The water ahead shimmers oddly, like glass left in a frost. He frowns, but shakes his head. Nothing to worry about. The officer on watch would have seen, would have warned them. The ship presses on, her four funnels puffing steadily into the fading light. Somewhere in the mail hold, a stack of letters waits to be delivered, full of hope, of promises, of lives yet to unfold. A child's drawing flutters from an open trunk, a crayon ship sailing toward a smiling sun. The smoking room clock ticks toward evening as men shuffle cards and debate politics. "This ship is the future," one declares, slapping down his hand. Outside, the temperature drops another degree. A steward rubs his arms, then scribbles the number in the logbook, unremarkable, routine. The stars begin to appear, cold and distant. Far below, in third class, the first chords of a fiddle tune rise through the floorboards, lively, brash, alive. The sound mingles with the creak of the ship, the murmur of waves, and the quiet, unspoken question no one dares to ask. The stairwell narrows as you descend into third class. The air grows warmer here, thick with the smell of fresh bread and beef stew from the galley. Wooden benches line the passageways, their surfaces worn smooth by generations of travelers. A group of men play cards nearby, their conversation mixing Swedish, Arabic, and broken English. Someone has chalked a hopscotch grid on the floor. Children's shoe prints still mark the squares. In the common room, A fiddler plays a folk tune as women darn socks and men discuss their plans. The floor vibrates gently with the ship's engines. A Finnish carpenter tells his table about the timberland he is going to buy in Michigan. Good pine wood there, he says, running his thumb along a wood sample in his pocket. Two sisters from Cornwall whisper about a dressmaker's shop they hope to open in Boston. Their needles flash in the lamplight as they sew name tags into their children's coats. Near the bulkhead, a young Lebanese man rubs his arms. It is colder today, he remarks to no one in particular. His breath barely mists in the air, but the metal wall behind him feels like ice. A sailor passing through laughs. Wait till Canada, then you will know cold. The immigrant nods but keeps his hand pressed against the steel plating. A Norwegian family shares photographs of their Minnesota farmland rocky soil, but theirs. The father traces the cabin blueprint with cracked fingers. His wife hums while knitting, the yarn stretching between her and their youngest daughter, like a tether. They do not notice when their teenage son slips away to peek through a porthole at the darkening sea. Survivors would later recall this evening's unusual warmth between strangers. A Jewish tailor teaches an Italian stonemason how to say wages in English. An Irish teenager shares her chocolate with a crying Belgian boy. The fiddler switches to Alexander's ragtime band, and a few couples rise to dance in the narrow aisle. Feet stomp in time, shaking dust from the overhead pipes. Down the corridor, children play hide-and-seek around the luggage stacks. Their laughter echoes off the low ceilings. One boy crouches behind a trunk, fingers brushing the chalk mark he made yesterday to measure his growth. A crewman usually scolds them for this, but tonight he just walks past, his mind on the thermometer, reading he took earlier. At supper, long tables fill with the click of tin utensils. The meal is simple, but plentiful roast beef, boiled potatoes, stewed figs. A Hungarian grandmother ladles extra gravy onto her grandson's plate. Eat, she urges. Tomorrow you will need strength for the inspection lines. The boy makes a face, but cleans his plate. Later, divers will find it still stacked with others in the wreck. Whispers start near the crew's staircase. The Belgic hit ice last week, a stoker mutters to his mate, wiping coal dust on his trousers. 6 compartments flooded before they limped to port. His companion shrugs. Not on a ship like this. The words travel as whispers do, reaching the young dishwasher, who tells the pantry boy, who mentions it to a girl carrying tea. She pauses near a family playing dominoes. They say there is ice ahead, she murmurs, setting down the tray. The grandmother rearranges her tiles without looking up. Ice in April? Nonsense. Her son nods, sliding a double 6 into place. They build these ships for worse. Outside, the ship's bell tolls 8 times. The fiddler starts a slower tune now, something from the old country. Couples sway gently, their shadows large on the bare walls. A steward passes through, collecting empty plates. He hesitates near the porthole, his reflection ghostly against the black glass. For a moment, he thinks he sees something pale drift by outside. Then the ship's lights flicker, and the image vanishes. A cluster of men debate America's wages near the stairwell. Ford pays $5 a day, insists a Welsh mechanic, sloshing his beer. His Swedish friend scoffs, and how many hours for that? Their argument fades as you move toward the sleeping quarters where families prepare for bed. The bunks stand 3 high, separated by thin curtains. Mothers tuck children under coarse blankets, promising tomorrow they will see the Statue of Liberty. A Syrian girl hides her doll beneath the pillow, the last gift from her grandmother in Beirut. In another cabin, brothers argue over who gets top bunk until their father settles it with a coin toss. The winner's cheer fades as the ship's engines suddenly shift pitch. 2 decks above, a steward checks the thermometer again. The mercury has dropped 3 degrees since dinner. He considers reporting it, then remembers the officer's laughter at yesterday's ice warning. The logbook lies open beside him, the page blank except for the date, April 14th, 1912. Back in 3rd class, a mother soothes her crying infant with a folk song. The melody drifts through the thin walls, reaching a young couple lying awake in their narrow berth. "Tomorrow," the man whispers, squeezing his wife's hand. She nods in the dark, imagining their small rented room in Chicago. The ship creaks softly around them, a sound like distant footsteps. The fiddler packs away his instrument, yawning. As he passes a porthole, his sleeve brushes the cold glass. He pauses, looks out, then shakes his head and moves on. The night is calm, the sea like black ink under the stars. In the galley, a cook wipes down the work table. The stew pot simmers for tomorrow's breakfast, more potatoes, more beef, more bread. He whistles as he works, unaware that the food will never be served. Nearby, a scullery boy pockets 2 rolls for his midnight break. They are going to still be in his pocket when the rescue ship picks him up hours later. The 3rd class purser locks the money cabinet, twirling the key on its string. The immigrant savings inside 14 here, 50 there, will sink to the ocean floor, untouched. He double-checks the lock, then blows out the lobby lamp. A child's chalk drawings still decorate the hallway outside the bathroom's stick figures, a crude ship, wobbly letters spelling Titanic. A steward considers cleaning them off, but it is late, and the graphite whispers against his fingers like a plea to remain. The ship's clock ticks toward midnight. Somewhere above, on the darkened bridge, the lookout rubs his tired eyes. The cold seeps through his gloves as he grips the rail, staring at a horizon he cannot see. Below him, 3rd class sleeps. The fiddler dreams of a New York music hall. The carpenter feels imaginary Michigan pine between his fingers. The Syrian girl curls around her doll, her breath steady. The grandmother murmurs in her sleep, one hand resting atop her grandson's forehead, and the ship sails on. Metal groans in the bulkheads, a sound so familiar no one wakes. The engines hum. The last dice game breaks up near the stern, men shuffling to their bunks with yawns. In the mailroom, seawater begins to trickle between the sacks of letters. The dampness spreads slowly, curling the edges of a postcard from the Cornish sisters to their aunt. The crossing has been splendid. Somewhere far below, in Boiler Room 6, a stoker shovels his last scoop of coal into the furnace. The flames glow bright against his sweat-streaked face. He has 4 hours left to live. He does not know this. Neither does the baker sleeping 2 decks above, who will wake to a faint shudder at 11:40 p.m. and mistake it for rough seas. The 3rd class purser's key sways gently on its hook. Tomorrow it will sink into darkness. Tonight it catches a sliver of lamplight, glinting like a distant star against the black. A steward makes his final rounds, stepping over the chalk drawings. He checks his watch. Nearly midnight. Ice warnings or no, his shift ends in an hour. The cold creeps in around the portholes. The ship sails on. The wireless room hums with activity, its brass equipment reflecting the glow of electric bulbs. Harold Bride, the junior operator, adjusts his headset as another message clicks through from the nearby Mesaba. Saw much heavy pack ice and great number large icebergs, also field ice. He scribbles the coordinates on a slip of paper without looking up. Around him, the cramped space smells of ozone and warm metal. It is the 6th ice warning today routine for April in the North Atlantic. Bride staples the note to a growing stack. The Mesaba's urgent MSG prefix goes unnoticed in the pile. Jack Phillips, the senior operator, works through a backlog of passenger telegrams. First-class patrons pay handsomely to send messages about stock trades and dinner plans. A nearby ship's warning about ice fields waits beneath the request for florists in Philadelphia. Phillips taps his key, focused on clearing the queue before his shift ends. The radio crackles with another vessel reporting bergs, but he does not slow his rhythm. Titanic's wireless, powerful for its time, can transmit only one message at once. Marconi Company protocol prioritizes paid traffic over navigation warnings unless marked as urgent. On the bridge, Second Officer Lightoller notes the dropping temperature in the logbook 31F by twilight. He mentions it to Captain Smith during rounds. The veteran commander nods absently. Ice warnings have dotted their route since leaving Queenstown. Standard practice is to maintain speed and post extra lookouts. Smith trusts his officers to spot any danger in time to correct course. The ship slices through the calm sea at 22 knots, nearly full speed, her engines vibrating steadily beneath the decks. In his quarters later, Smith will recall this moment with particular clarity. Down in the crow's nest, lookout Frederick Fleet rubs his bare hands together. The ship's binoculars remain locked in a cabinet below, their key accidentally left in Southampton by a transferred officer. Fleet squints into the gathering dark. His training manual states icebergs reflect light differently than waves they appear black against a moonlit sea. But tonight offers no moon, only stars pricking through the clear sky. The cold air smells faintly metallic, like frozen iron. He stamps his feet to keep circulation moving, the wood beneath him vibrating with the ship's speed. Messages about ice drift between vessels all along the shipping lane. The Californian radios that it has stopped for the night, surrounded by pack ice just 19 miles north of Titanic's path. Phillips, busy transmitting a passenger's birthday greeting, snaps back, "Shut up. I am working Cape Race." The offended operator on the Californian switches off his set for the night. Titanic continues west alone. In the first-class lounge, passengers admire the sunset through leaded glass windows. None notice when an officer quietly checks the thermometer again. The temperature has dropped another 5 degrees in 30 minutes. Outside, the sea stretches flat as a mirror, an unusual calm that masks the presence of nearby ice. The cold makes the air exceptionally clear. Lights from other ships appear closer than they are. Deep in the hull, stokers shovel coal into Boiler Room 6. The aft compartments thrum with heat, making the metal bulkheads sweat condensation. No one comments when a drip runs down the newly painted steel. The White Star Line built these walls to compartmentalize flooding, but the blueprints assume impacts at slower speeds. Chief Engineer Bell monitors pressure gauges, focused on maintaining the pace set by the bridge. His crew has no access to the ice warnings piling up in the wireless room. On the boat deck, crewmen secure the canvas covers over lifeboats 1 through 16. The gleaming white hulls hold enough space for 1,178 people, half the souls on board. Officers reassure passengers that the boats exist only as a precaution required by outdated British Board of Trade regulations. A deckhand tests the davit mechanisms, their pulleys squeaking slightly in the cold. He does not notice the way the metal stiffens under his fingers. The ship's clock ticks toward 9:20 p.m. when Phillips finally opens the Mesaba's warning. He reads the coordinates but makes no notation on the bridge's chart. The officers already know ice lurks somewhere ahead. Their lookouts scan for it every night near the Grand Banks. Titanic steams on, her bow cutting through water that grows steadily colder. The brass binnacle compass glows faintly as Quartermaster Hitchens steers by the stars. In the Marconi room, Bride stretches his arms. The telegraph machine has run non-stop since dinner, transmitting society gossip and business correspondence. A fresh stack of passenger messages waits encoding, including one that reads, "Made good time. Expect arrival Wednesday. Secure theater tickets." The paper crackles as Phillips tucks it into the queue. Neither operator mentions the ice warnings as they hand off shifts. Up in the crow's nest, Fleet relieves his partner with a casual joke about the cold. They discuss baseball scores from yesterday's wireless reports. Fleet takes up position by the starboard rail, his breath fogging in the air. Far below, the foredeck lies deserted, except for a carpenter checking equipment lockers. His tool bag contains the missing key for the binocular cabinet, forgotten beneath spare wrenches. The galley staff wraps uneaten pastries for tomorrow's breakfast. The cold makes dough rise slower, so bakers started evening prep early. One apprentice needs a new batch, his knuckles brushing flour across the wooden table. Later, this same flour will coat his sleeves as he helps load lifeboats. For now, he whistles along to the band playing in the first-class lounge. On the bridge, officers discuss the peculiar atmospheric conditions. A faint haze glows along the horizon ice blink, though none recognize it yet. The sea remains deceptively calm, its surface undisturbed by the currents pushing bergs into Titanic's path. They maintain speed. Cunard's Lusitania would cross this same stretch faster if the weather allowed. The ship's lights sparkle against the dark water, their reflections stretching toward the horizon. Passengers remark how clearly they see stars tonight, no moon, but the Milky Way glows bright enough to cast shadows. Few consider that this same clarity makes icebergs harder to spot without moonlight to glint off their surfaces. In the Turkish bath, a steward adjusts the thermostat as guests complain of unusual cold. The pipes clank faintly, their usual hum lower in tone. Beneath the floor, seawater laps against hull plates chilled by 31-degree ocean. The temperature has dropped so gradually that few notice until they step outside. A deckhand making rounds pauses near the forward hatch. The steel beneath his palm feels strangely cold, colder than the night air warrants. He mentions it to a passing officer, who checks the thermometer and shrugs. "Spring nights on the Atlantic," he says, continuing his inspection. Their footsteps echo down the deserted promenade. Engineers below decks monitor pressure gauges, watching needles hold steady at 190 psi. The ship vibrates with power, her four massive propellers churning through dark water. Rivets along the hull joints flex minutely under stress, their red lead sealant still fresh from Belfast. Phillips sends the last passenger telegram at 11:30 p.m., a frivolous note about champagne preferences for a New York party. He yawns and stretches, glancing at the unsent ice warnings. The Mesaba's coordinates would place bergs directly ahead, but Titanic's course has not altered since noon. Phillips files the paper with others beneath a paperweight shaped like an anchor. The room falls quiet except for the static hiss of empty airwaves. In their cabins, passengers settle into beds with electric heaters and down quilts. A child asks her mother why the porthole glass feels so cold. "The sea's always chilly at night," comes the reply. The girl presses her palm to the circle of glass, leaving a fog mark that fades slowly. Out in the darkness, the Labrador Current carries icebergs southeast at about 1 knot. A particularly massive one drifts 13 miles ahead, its underwater bulk stretching nearly 400 feet, twice the length of Titanic's tallest funnel. The cold water around it barely ripples as the ship draws nearer at 22 knots. The clock in the wireless room ticks past 11:35. Phillips removes his headset, rubbing the indentations on his temples. Through the thin walls, faint strains of ragtime music drift from the first-class lounge. He does not hear Fleet's sudden shout from the crow's nest, already muffled by wind and distance. 3 decks below, postal clerks sort the last outgoing mail. Their hands move mechanically, slotting letters into racks marked for New York, Chicago, San Francisco. No one notices the first faint metallic groan from the ship's bow as it meets the berg. The music plays on, masking the sound of ice scraping along steel. The first-class lounge glows with electric lamps as evening settles over the ship. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across velvet chairs and polished mahogany tables. Couples sit sipping liqueurs, the women's pearl necklaces catching the light as they laugh. A haze of cigar smoke hangs near the ceiling, mixing with the scent of coffee and floral perfumes. The band begins playing Alexander's Ragtime Band, and several passengers tap their feet in time. Bandleader Wallace Hartley nods to his musicians, his violin tucked under his chin. The 5-piece ensemble moves smoothly between ragtime tunes and waltzes, their music covering the occasional creak of the ship's fittings. A few passengers glance at the windows where frost patterns have begun forming at the edges, an odd sight for April. The room remains warm enough that no one pays it much mind. Waiters circulate with trays of brandy and delicate pastries. Near the grand piano, a violinist named Jock Hume rubs his fingers together between songs. The cold makes his joints stiff, and he flexes his hand under the table when no one's looking. His bow scrapes slightly on the next downbeat, the sound lost in the general murmur of conversation. He thinks about the letter in his cabin, a note from his fiancée asking when he will be home. The band plays on, the notes of Song d'automne floating through the room. At a corner table, a banker from Philadelphia studies the wine list while his wife fans herself. "They keep it so warm in here," she complains, unaware that the outside temperature has dropped below freezing. Through the nearest porthole, the ocean lies still and dark, its surface like black glass. The band transitions into "Oh You Beautiful Doll," and an elderly couple rises to dance. Their shoes whisper across the parquet floor as other passengers clap politely. First-class passenger Margaret Brown chats with Dr. Alice Leader near the fireplace. Their discussion ranges from women's suffrage to the ship's impressive speed. Neither notices when a steward quietly adds more coal to the fire. The logs crackle, sending up sparks that reflect in the mirrored walls. On the other side of the room, author Helen Churchill Candy writes postcards at a writing desk, her pen scratching steadily. Several addressed to New York sit drying nearby letters that will never reach their destinations. The band takes a short break, and the hum of conversation grows louder. Wallace Hartley checks his pocket watch, 11:15 p.m. He motions to his musicians, and they begin their final set with Margie. A waiter clears empty glasses from a vacated table, stacking them carefully on his tray. He does not notice the slight vibration that runs through the ship beneath his feet, absorbed as he is in his work. In the musician's corner, cellist Percy Taylor adjusts his sheet music. The cold has made his instrument's strings go slightly flat, and he twists a peg to compensate. His breath is visible in the lamplight as he exhales. A young couple walks past the bandstand, the woman's silk dress rustling. She shivers and clutches her wrap tighter. "I thought spring crossings were supposed to be warm," she murmurs to her companion. Near the door, a group of men discuss business over whiskey. "They say we are going to dock Tuesday evening," one remarks, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Another checks his pocket calendar, calculating meetings for Wednesday. The ship's clock chimes the half hour, its tone clear above the music. Outside, stars glitter with unusual brightness in the cold air. Wallace Hartley nods to his musicians as they finish the waltz. He leans toward them as the applause fades. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, "that will do for tonight." The words will later be remembered as his last instruction to the band. They pack their instruments carefully, unaware they are going to be playing them again before dawn under very different circumstances. The remaining passengers begin drifting toward their cabins or the smoking rooms. A steward extinguishes some of the wall lamps as the lounge empties. His shoes click against the hardwood floor as he moves from table to table, straightening chairs and collecting abandoned newspapers. Through the windows, the horizon remains dark, no moon to illuminate whatever might lie ahead. The band members exit through a service door, their instrument cases bumping softly against the walls. In the now quiet lounge, the grand piano lid remains open, its ivory keys gleaming. A forgotten glove lies draped over a chairback, its owner likely already in bed. The fireplace embers glow faintly, their warmth fading as the ship sails on into the night. Somewhere above, the crow's nest lookouts stamp their feet and blow on their hands, scanning the darkness. A steward turns the last key in the lounge's main doors, securing them for the night. He hums a few bars of Alexander's ragtime band as he walks away, his footsteps echoing in the corridor. Behind him, the room darkens as he extinguishes the final lamp. The ship moves steadily forward, its engines a steady vibration felt through every deck. The air grows colder still, frost creeping farther across the porthole glass. Down in third class, passengers hear faint music drifting through the ventilation shafts, the band playing one last song in the crew's quarters. In first-class cabins, some passengers stir in their sleep as the temperature drops further. One woman reaches groggily for an extra blanket, pulling it over her shoulders before drifting off again. On the bridge, an officer notes the time and prepares for the midnight watch. The lounge glows with electric chandeliers as evening settles over the Titanic. Passengers gather in clusters around the room, their laughter mixing with the sound of clinking glasses. The band plays Alexander's ragtime band, the cheerful melody bouncing off the wood-paneled walls. Women in evening gowns drape fur stoles over their shoulders,
their pearls catching the light. Men swirl brandy in crystal snifters, cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling. The room smells of lemon polish and expensive perfume. Violinist Wallace Hartley bows his instrument, leading the five-piece ensemble. His fingers move precisely across the strings, though he feels the stiffness from the dropping temperature. Between songs, he flexes his hand discreetly, trying to coax warmth back into his joints. The other musicians adjust their sheet music, their breath visible in the chill air. Passengers do not seem to notice they tap their feet to the Merry Widow Waltz, their faces flushed with wine and good company. At a corner table, Mrs. Astor fans herself with a dinner menu. Her diamond
earrings sparkle as she leans toward her companions. Nearby, Benjamin Guggenheim chats with his valet about tomorrow's plans. Both will be dead by morning, though neither suspects anything amiss tonight. The band switches to "Oh You Beautiful Doll," and a young couple rises to dance. The woman's silk dress whispers against the carpet, while her partner counts the beats under his breath. Near the grand piano, a waiter arranges coffee service on a silver tray. The cups rattle slightly, not from rough seas, but from the constant vibration of the ship's engines at full speed. He glances at the thermometer by the door. 31 degrees Fahrenheit outside. Such cold for April. Shrugging, he fills a cup with steaming coffee, the rich aroma cutting through the cigar smoke. Across the room, Colonel Gracie argues good-naturedly about cricket scores with a British diplomat. The band takes requests from passengers still lingering after dinner. A woman asks for Valse Septembre, her favorite from Parisian music halls. The cellist nods in recognition and flips through his music sheets. As they play, the violinist notices condensation forming on the inside of the porthole windows. He makes a mental note to mention it to the steward later. Perhaps the heating system needs adjusting. The ship's designer, Thomas Andrews, walks past the musician's alcove, pausing briefly to enjoy the music before continuing his evening inspection of the ship. On the song list resting against Hartley's chair, the pieces march down the page in his neat handwriting. Song of Autumn, Serenade, Wedding Dance. The final song listed, Nearer My God to Thee, has a small mark beside it, indicating a potential closing number. Hartley glances at his pocket watch, 11:15 p.m., and signals for the next tune. The passengers never realize these choices will become their memorial soundtrack in mere hours. At the piano, pianist Theo Brayley flexes his cold fingers before starting the next piece. His mother had warned him about drafty shipboard lounges when he took this job. He plays the opening bars of Funeral March as a joke, earning chuckles from nearby listeners who do not recognize the grim irony. The bandleader shoots him a look, and he quickly transitions to In the Shadows. Couples continue dancing, their shoes scuffing the intricate parquet floor. One woman complains her partner keeps missing steps. The floor seems tilted, she whispers, not realizing the ship will soon develop exactly such a list. The band plays on as stewards circulate with trays of nightcaps, brandy for the gentlemen, hot milk with rum for the ladies. White Star Line service remains impeccable, even this late in the evening. Near the entrance, first-class steward Henry Etches overhears two passengers debating iceberg dangers. This ship could slice through an ice cube the size of Westminster Abbey, one man declares, before draining his whiskey. Etches makes no comment as he collects empty glasses stacking them carefully on his tray. Earlier today, he already noticed ice fragments in the drinking water pitchers, something that he had never seen on previous voyages. He did mention it to the chief steward, who shrugged it off as unusual weather. The clock above the bar ticks toward 11:30. In the musician's alcove, the bass player rubs his numb fingertips together between songs. The room's temperature continues dropping, though most passengers attribute it to the late hour rather than the iceberg-laden waters outside. Someone requests La Marseillaise, and the band obliges, drawing applause from French passengers at the far tables. The lively tune masks the occasional creak of the ship's hull against the freezing seawater outside. John Jacob Astor stands near the fireplace, warming his hands. His pregnant wife, Madeline, dozes slightly beside him, exhausted from the long day. Neither notices when his gold pocket watch slips from his vest pocket, the same watch that will later be recovered from his body. Its hands stopped at 2:20 a.m. Around them, conversation ebbs and flows, talk of Newport cottages, New York politics, European spas. No one discusses icebergs or lifeboats. At the next table over, Major Archibald Butt tells a story about President Taft that has his companions laughing. The first officer walks past the lounge doors briefly, checking that all appears in order before continuing his rounds. Somewhere below, a steward notes more ice warnings piled near the wireless room, waiting to be delivered to the bridge in the morning. No one hurries to bring them upstairs. Such messages have arrived all week without incident. The band finishes their set as midnight approaches. Hartley thanks his musicians quietly while packing away his violin. They will reconvene tomorrow morning at 11, he reminds them. Percussionist Fred Clark stretches his arms, complaining good-naturedly about his stiff shoulders. None of them know they will be playing again much sooner, not for dancing, but to calm panicking passengers as lifeboats are loaded heavily. A young couple leaves the lounge, stepping onto the frigid promenade deck. The woman gasps at the sudden cold, hugging her shawl tighter. "Look how still the water is," her companion remarks, pointing at the glassy black surface stretching endlessly. Neither sees the faint white shape glinting in the distance, where moonlight touches an iceberg's tip. They linger a moment longer, then retreat indoors, rubbing their arms for warmth. Inside, the last few passengers settle their bar tabs and collect coats. The band members joke as they pack their instruments. Tomorrow's selections will be easier after they had rested. Mrs. Candy thanks them for the lovely music before heading toward the grand staircase. Her evening gown will become a life-saving buoyancy aid when she wraps it around an oar in Lifeboat 6. As the musicians leave, the lounge falls quiet except for the faint hum of the ship and occasional footsteps in the corridor outside. Steward extinguishes some of the lights, leaving just enough illumination for late stragglers. The piano lid clicks shut, the sheet music filed carefully in its cabinet. The empty chairs sit at odd angles where dancers pushed them aside earlier, their velvet cushions retaining faint impressions. In the silence, the ship's clock strikes 12 chimes. Far below in the boiler rooms, stokers continue shoveling coal to maintain speed. On the bridge, officers note the dropping temperature but keep course and speed steady. The wireless operator finally retires for the night, leaving the telegraph silent. The iceberg drifts unseen ahead, its massive underwater bulk stretching 7 stories deep into the dark water. The lounge's remaining occupants do not notice when the ventilation system begins blowing noticeably colder air. A steward closes drapes over the porthole windows, shutting out the freezing darkness beyond. The last passengers drift toward their cabins, yawning and discussing plans for tomorrow, perhaps shuffleboard on deck, drinks in the cafe, telegrams to send upon arrival. None suspect they have just enjoyed their last night of music. As the final light switches off in the lounge, the piano stands silent in the corner. Sheet music for Songe d'automne rests on the stand, the last song played before the iceberg strikes. In 20 minutes, the band will reassemble here in life jackets, ordered to play calming music as passengers evacuate. But for now, the room sleeps like the rest of the ship, moving steadily toward its fate in the quiet night. The only sound is the occasional creak of wood settling, or perhaps the first faint murmurs of stressed steel where the iceberg will soon scrape the hull. Somewhere above decks, a watchman adjusts his cap against the cold and scans the horizon. The sea stretches endlessly calm, reflecting stars like scattered diamonds. Far ahead, invisible in the moonless night, the ice field waits. The clock ticks toward 11:40 as the Titanic sails on, her passengers dreaming in their berths, her musicians storing their instruments, her stewards preparing for morning. The night holds its breath. The bridge remains quiet as First Officer William Murdoch takes over the night watch at 10 p.m. Second Officer Charles Lightoller gives a brief report. 22.5 knots, clear skies, no issues noted. The men speak in low voices, their breath visible in the crisp air. Lightoller mentions the dropping temperature before leaving. It is near freezing now, unusual for April. Murdoch nods and takes his position near the compass. The shift change takes less than 3 minutes. Look out, Frederick Fleet climbs into the crow's nest at 10 p.m., relieving his colleague. The wooden platform sways slightly with the ship's motion. Fleet stamps his feet to stay warm. There is no heater in the nest, just a telephone link to the bridge. He rubs his gloved hands together, wishing for the binoculars locked away in Southampton. The missing glasses force him to rely on his naked eyes squinting at the dark horizon. The sea looks strangely smooth tonight, no whitecaps breaking the surface. That is bad for spotting icebergs, which normally show foamy water at their base. Fleet scans carefully anyway, knowing the Californian reported ice nearby. His wool cap does little against the cold, as wind nips at his ears. The salty air smells cleaner at this height, mixed with faint coal smoke from the funnels below. Down on the bridge, Quartermaster Robert Hykins grips the ship's wheel. The polished spokes feel icy under his fingers, despite his gloves. The compass light casts a soft glow on his face as he maintains course south 86 west. Everything seems normal, though the cold seeps through his heavy coat. Occasionally, he glances at the thermometer. The mercury keeps dropping. Murdoch paces the bridge, checking instruments. The ship's speed holds steady at nearly full power. Through the windows, he sees endless stars reflecting on calm water, beautiful, but making icebergs harder to spot. He considers ordering a slight course change, just in case, but the plotted route already skirts the reported ice field. Besides, the Titanic can turn quickly if needed. In the crow's nest, Fleet notices something odd, a slight haze on the horizon ahead. Not fog exactly, but a dark blur, where sky meets water. He has seen this before. It sometimes means ice nearby. Furrowing his brow, he leans forward against the railing, trying to focus.
At 11:39 p.m., the shape becomes clear, a massive dark mass directly in their path, taller than the forecastle deck. Fleet's gloved hand hits the brass warning bell 3 times, the signal for danger ahead. He grabs the telephone to the bridge, waiting precious seconds for a reply. When Sixth Officer Moody answers, Fleet's voice comes out strained. "Iceberg right ahead." Moody relays the message to Murdoch, who jumps into action. Murdoch orders hard a starboard to turn the ship left while pulling the engine telegraph to full Aston. The commands happen almost simultaneously. Hitchens spins the wheel as far as it will go, his arms straining. Below decks, engineers scramble to reverse the massive engines, but stopping 46,000 tons takes time. The iceberg looms closer, an uneven black shape against the stars. Fleet grips the crow's nest rail, watching helplessly as the ship turns too slowly. The iceberg's peak rises near the height of the crow's nest itself, its submerged bulk extending far below the surface. A faint blue glow shimmers where starlight reflects off the ice. For a long moment, it seems the Titanic might miss the obstacle. The bow begins swinging left, but the ship's momentum carries it forward. At 11:40 p.m., a grinding noise echoes through the forward hull like a heavy suitcase dragged across gravel. Fleet feels the vibration through the crow's nest floor. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side, showering the deck below with ice chunks. On the bridge, Murdoch immediately closes the watertight doors by flipping a switch. Red warning lights flash in boiler rooms as steel gates seal off compartments. The shudder lasts only seconds, barely noticeable to most passengers. In first class, some sleeping guests roll over in their bunks, assuming the ship changed course. Few realize anything's wrong. Fleet watches the iceberg slip past, bobbing slightly in their wake. The collision lasted maybe 30 seconds, but the damage is done. Below the waterline, the ice has torn open a series of gashes along the first 5 compartments, a fatal injury the Titanic was not designed to survive. Freezing seawater already gushes in at a rate of 7 tons per second. Murdoch sends Moody to alert Captain Smith while checking for damage. The initial reports seem minor, some flooding in the mailroom, a bit of water in the forward.
Hold. Neither man yet realizes 6 compartments are breached, 2 more than the Titanic can handle. Smith arrives within minutes, his jacket buttoned hastily over pajamas. In the crow's nest, Fleet stays at his post, still scanning for more ice. His hands shake, not just from cold, now. The telephone rings again. Moody asks him to describe what he saw. Fleet's voice cracks as he explains the iceberg's size and position. Through the nest's floor grate, he hears distant shouts as crewmen examine the damage. Down in the boiler rooms, stokers face a different reality. Seawater swirls around their ankles in Boiler Room 6, rising fast. They retreat as ordered, closing watertight doors behind them. The icy water soaks their boots and trousers as they scramble up ladders to safety. Within minutes, the compartment will be completely flooded. Captain Smith orders a full damage assessment. Thomas Andrews, the ship's designer, accompanies officers below decks. Their footsteps echo through corridors suddenly gone quiet. Crewmen shine lanterns on the hull where seawater spurts through jagged tears. Andrews does quick calculations. In his head, the Titanic has maybe 2 hours left. On deck, a few curious passengers poke their heads out, wondering about the brief shudder. Most see nothing unusual, just calm waters and starry skies. Some notice ice fragments on the forward well deck, but assume it is just night frost. A young couple even picks up a piece, laughing as it melts in their hands. Meanwhile, postal workers struggle to save mailbags from the flooding sorting room. Water rises around their calves as they drag sacks up to higher decks. They do not know yet that none of the 7,000 mail sacks will survive the night. The ocean already soaks letters and parcels, ink bleeding across envelopes holding hopeful words. Captain Smith returns to the bridge at midnight, his face grim. After speaking with Andrews, he knows the truth: the Titanic is doomed. His hand trembles slightly as he gives the order no captain ever wants to say: uncover the lifeboats. Officers exchange glances, but move quickly to comply. The first lifeboat covers come off at 12:05 a.m. In the crow's nest, Fleet gets relieved at midnight. As scheduled, he descends the ladder stiffly, his muscles tense from cold and shock. Below decks, he passes crewmen preparing lifeboats, their faces confused but calm. No one tells him yet that his iceberg sighting came too late, that the ship had only 37 seconds to react. The bridge grows crowded as officers come and go with reports. The 6th boiler room floods now, water rising past the stokers' abandoned tools. Distress rockets are prepared white starbursts that can be seen for miles. Phillips and Bride in the wireless room set up the emergency transmitter, its range far greater than normal. At 12:15 a.m., the first distress calls go out. CQD, CQD, CQD. This is Titanic. We have struck an iceberg and require immediate assistance. The message repeats every few minutes, as in the bakery on G deck, Charles Jogan pauses while kneading dough for tomorrow's bread. His hands still for a moment as he feels something odd, a faint vibration through the wooden counter, like when someone drops a suitcase in a distant corridor. He glances at the other bakers, who shrug and continue working. The ship's constant hum of engines and creaks make small tremors normal. Jiaoshin resumes kneading, flour dusting his forearms as he folds the dough. Outside the galley door, a steward walks briskly past, without stopping. In the engine room, greasers exchange confused looks when the ship's massive pistons suddenly stop. The ringing metallic echoes fade as the turbines wind down. An oiler wipes his forehead and squints at the pressure gauges. No alarm sounds, no shouts echo down the stairwells. The abrupt silence feels unsettling, but orders from the bridge come first. They wait in the sudden quiet, the only sound now the dripping of condensation from pipes overhead. 3 decks above, third-class passengers continue their evening routines unaffected. A group of Italian immigrants laugh over a card game, slapping down worn playing cards on a makeshift table. Children chase each other through the corridors, their shouts mingling with the squeak of shoes on linoleum. The ship feels as solid as ever beneath their feet. No one notices when a steward pauses near a bulkhead, pressing his palm against the cold metal as if sensing something. The iceberg's damage remains hidden below the waterline. Its submerged bulk has scraped along nearly 300 feet of the Titanic's hull, buckling steel plates and popping rivets. Seawater already gushes through 6 separate punctures, flooding 5 watertight compartments. The collision happened so smoothly that in the first-class smoking room, a waiter barely spills wine as he tops up glasses. Only later will investigators understand how the iceberg's shape more ledge than peak allowed it to gut the ship like a zipper being opened. Jiaoshin abandons his dough when a junior baker rushes in, reporting water in the forward compartments. Instead of heading for the lifeboats, Jiaoshin begins filling sacks with loaves of bread. He moves methodically, knowing the food may be needed later. The other bakers hesitate before following his lead, stacking rolls and biscuits into any available containers. The galley stays warm from the ovens, masking the cold seeping in from damaged areas nearby. In the mail sorting room on G-deck, Clerk James Williamson spots the first trickle of seawater between floorboards. He nudges a colleague and points at the dark stain spreading across the wood. Within minutes, the trickle becomes a stream swirling around their ankles. They start hauling mail sacks to higher ground, their shoes splashing through the rising water. The registered mail letters with cash and valuables goes first. No one has told them to evacuate yet, so they keep working as water laps at the sorting tables. Captain Smith consults with Thomas Andrews in the smoking room. The ship's designer sketches quick calculations on a notepad, his face growing graver with each stroke. The numbers do not lie. 5 flooded compartments mean the Titanic will sink. Smith's weathered hands remain steady as he folds the paper, his decades at sea allowing no outward panic. They agree quietly. Prepare the lifeboats. Andrews excuses himself to continue inspecting the damage, walking just quickly enough that a few observant passengers glance after him. On the boat deck, crewmen struggle with frozen pulley systems as they uncover lifeboats. The canvas covers stick in the cold, requiring extra tugs to free them. An officer barks orders while another counts heads, not enough crew assigned to each boat station. The activity draws curious first-class passengers in evening wear, who cluster near the stairwell murmuring questions. No alarm bells ring. No shouts echo through corridors. The ship's list remains slight enough that champagne glasses still sit level on dining tables below. Jiaoxin leaves the bakery with his bread sacks, taking the crew stairwell up toward the decks. He passes engineers heading the opposite direction, their tools clanking as they hurry toward the flooding. No one runs. No one raises their voice. The stairwell smells of fresh paint and sea air, just as it has all voyage. A young steward pauses to let Juggin pass, his arms full of blankets. Neither man speaks about why the blankets might be needed. In the third-class common room, the card game breaks up as stewards begin directing people toward the stairs. The announcements stay calm. Just a precaution, ladies and gentlemen, but some travelers notice the steward's taut expressions. Mothers wake sleeping children, wrapping them in extra layers. A Serbian tailor hesitates before locking his cabin door, unsure whether to bring his life savings or leave them. The ship still feels solid around them, making the orders seem unnecessary. Ice crunches underfoot near the forward hatch where berg fragments litter the deck. Andrews moves through the ship like a ghost, inspecting each flooding compartment. He runs his hand along bulkhead walls, feeling the tremors as metal strains under pressure. In Boiler Room 5, crewmen stand chest-deep in swirling water, still trying to pump it out. Andrews does not tell them their efforts are futile. He simply nods thanks before continuing his grim assessment. Later, survivors will remember his calm demeanor as he helped women into lifeboats, never mentioning his certain fate. The post office is abandoned now, seawater lifting loose letters into swirling eddies. A leather mail pouch floats near the ceiling, its contents beginning to bleed ink. On D-deck, water creeps up stairwells 1 inch at a time, silent except for the occasional bubble of air escaping. The ship's tilt remains barely noticeable
just enough to make spilled marbles roll slowly across the floor in the nursery playroom. Johin reaches the boat
deck and begins distributing bread to crew members. He works steadily, ignoring the whispers spreading among passengers. Nearby, a woman laughs nervously that she can't get her lifebelt straps adjusted properly. The band assembles near the first-class entrance, instruments in hand. They strike up a ragtime tune, the cheerful melody clashing with the growing tension. No one has announced the ship is sinking yet, but the uncovered lifeboats tell their own story. In the wireless room, Phillips taps out the first CQD distress call while Bride prepares the newer SOS signal. The messages go unanswered for precious minutes until the Carpathia responds. Phillips' shoulders relax slightly at the reply, though he keeps his fingers on the key. The room smells of overheated wires and sweat as the two men work, aware the ship's power could fail at any moment. Through the open door, they hear the band switching to waltzes, the tempo unchanged despite the crisis. First-class passengers mill about near lifeboats, many still in evening attire. They clutch jewelry cases and small dogs, more concerned about propriety than danger. A man complains about the delay he was assured this drill would not interfere with bedtime. The crew struggles to convince people to board the boats, emphasizing it is just a precaution. Few notice when the ship's list increases slightly, making the deck tilt perceptibly beneath their feet. Andrews moves among the crowd, quietly urging people toward the lifeboats. His calm voice carries authority as he explains the situation without causing panic. He helps an elderly woman with her lifebelt, his fingers steady on the straps. Nearby, Captain Smith checks the lifeboat launchings, his white beard glowing in the deck lights. His orders come in the same measured tones he's used for 40 years at sea. Only the tightness around his eyes hints at the truth he knows. The male clerks finally evacuate their flooded workroom, carrying what sacks they could save. They pass Join on the stairs, now bringing extra supplies to the lifeboats. His arms ache from the weight, but he makes trip after trip without complaint. Through an open doorway, he glimpses the gymnasium, where two first-class boys still pedal exercise bikes, their parents watching anxiously nearby. The electric clock above the door reads 12:25 a.m., its hands moving steadily through the final hours. On the starboard side, Lifeboat 7 prepares to lower, with only 28 people aboard half its capacity. The crew hesitates, debating whether to fill it further, but impatient passengers urge them to proceed. The boat jerks downward, its new ropes creaking under the strain. Below, the black water reflects the ship's lights like a mirror, showing no sign of the turmoil within the hull. As the lifeboat reaches the surface, its occupants look up at the Titanic's towering side, marveling that anything could threaten such a giant. The ship settles deeper by the bow, its descent almost imperceptible to those aboard. In the squash court, seawater now covers the floor, floating loose balls against the walls. The Turkish baths, heated tiles, steam as water laps at their edges. Far below, the grand staircase's crystal dome still glitters dry and intact, though water rises steadily toward it through stairwells and corridors. The ship gives few outward signs of distress, no dramatic tilting, no crashing sounds, just a gradual settling, inch by patient inch. Andrew stands alone near the first-class lounge, watching the evacuation. His hands rest in his pockets, the ship's diagrams crumpled inside. He has done everything possible, now only waiting remains. A passing steward offers him a lifebelt, which Andrew declines with a quiet shake of his head. Around him, the Titanic's luxurious details gleam under electric lights, the carved oak paneling, the leaded glass, the fresh flowers in porcelain vases. Everything looks exactly as it should on a maiden voyage, except for the lifeboats being lowered outside the windows. Jalvin opens a storage locker and pulls out a cork lifebelt, securing it over his white baker's jacket. Around him, the crew's voices remain low and professional, no shouting, no obvious panic. He takes a moment to adjust the straps properly, knowing he might need them later. Through an open deck door, he sees stars reflecting on perfectly calm water. The bitter cold air smells clean and sharp, unchanged from earlier in the evening. The iceberg itself is long gone, vanished into the darkness astern. On the bridge, Captain Smith watches Lifeboat 5 descend successfully. The crew works efficiently now, overcoming initial hiccups with the davits. Smith's face remains impassive as he calculates how many more must be launched and how little time remains. Below his feet, the ship groans softly as bulkheads begin to fail under increasing pressure. The sound barely carries over the murmur of passengers and the band's continuing music. No one running the evacuation mentions the obvious: there are not enough lifeboats for everyone aboard. Thomas Andrews stands near the fireplace in the first-class lounge, watching the evacuation through the windows. He studies the Titanic's elegant details. One last time, the intricately carved woodwork, the plush carpets, the crystal chandeliers, everything he helped design, now sinking beneath him. A passing steward stops, surprised to find him there. "Are you not going to try, Mr. Andrews?" The ship's designer just smiles sadly and shakes his head. Outside, the band begins playing Alexander's ragtime band again, the cheerful melody drifting across the decks. Night watch. The boat deck hums with quiet activity as passengers gather in lifebelts, their bulky cork vests making movements awkward. A woman adjusts her husband's straps, laughing as she ties them too tight. "You would think that they warn us before these silly drills," she says, not a clue in the world how serious the situation is. Nearby, a group of men discuss whether this interruption will delay their arrival in New York. Their breath forms small clouds in the cold air, but no one seems alarmed. The ship's lights burn steadily, casting warm pools on the deck. Crew members move with purpose, but without urgency. They follow the outdated Board of Trade regulations lifeboat capacity for 1,178 people on a ship carrying 2208. No one mentions the discrepancy. A steward helps an elderly woman into Lifeboat 7, assuring her it is merely precautionary. "We are going to recall the boats soon enough," he says, adjusting his white gloves. The woman pats his arm and asks if she should bring her jewelry case. Near Lifeboat 3, Seaman Moore struggles with a stuck pulley. The davit mechanism creaks but won't budge. Passengers watch as he kicks the base, muttering under his breath. An officer arrives to assist, their combined weight finally loosening the ropes. The lifeboat sways slightly as it is lowered level with the deck. No one comments on how few boats are being prepared compared to the crowd gathering. The band has relocated to the boat deck, their breath visible as they play. Wallace Hartley nods to his musicians, and the cheerful ragtime shifts to autumn. The melody floats over the scene, masking the quiet sounds of distress calls being sent from the wireless room. A few passengers hum along,
tapping their feet on the deck. The music feels reassuring. Nothing bad could happen with such pleasant tunes in the air. Stars glitter sharply overhead, their light undimmed by city smog or clouds. A young couple pauses to admire them, their life belts forgotten for a moment. "I have never seen so many," the woman murmurs. Her fiancé points out constellations, his finger tracing patterns they will never see together again. Nearby, a child tries to catch his breath clouds, giggling when they disappear. The deck tilts slightly beneath everyone's feet, just enough to make a few people grab the rail. A steward steadies a serving cart before it can roll away. "Must be shifting ballast," someone suggests. The explanation satisfies the group. No one looks toward the bow, where the sea now laps at previously dry portholes. The ship's list grows more pronounced by the minute, but the angle remains gentle enough to dismiss. In lifeboat, a little girl tugs her mother's sleeve. "Will we miss breakfast?" she asks. The woman smiles and smooths her daughter's hair. "Of course not, darling. We will be back aboard soon." Around them, other passengers nod agreement. The idea that this evacuation might be permanent has not occurred to most. The Titanic feels too massive, too modern to be in real danger. Crew members continue loading women and children first, though interpretations vary. Some officers allow husbands to accompany their wives. Others enforce strict separation. A well-dressed man argues with Second Officer Lightoller about joining his family. "Be a man," Lightoller snaps. "We need you to help with the other boats." The man steps back, chastened.
His wife clutches her pearls as the lifeboat lowers away. The band switches to hymn tunes, now nearer, my God, to thee, according to survivors' accounts. The familiar melody comforts some while unnerving others. A clergyman begins singing along loudly, his voice carrying across the deck. Several passengers join in, their breath puffing in rhythm. The religious overhang makes a few people glance nervously at the still calm sea. Below decks, the reality becomes harder to ignore. Third-class passengers finally reach the boat deck after navigating blocked corridors and misdirections. Their arrival causes murmurs among first-class travelers. A woman in ermine wrinkles her nose at the group of immigrants. "Must they stand so close?" she asks her companion. The ship's social hierarchy persists even now. Lifeboat 14 lowers with only 28 people aboard half its capacity. Officer Lowe fires his pistol along the side to deter rushing. The shots echo sharply, making several women gasp. A man near the back ducks instinctively, then laughs at his own reaction. "Bit dramatic for a drill," he jokes to his neighbor. The lifeboat hits the water with a gentle splash, its occupants still not comprehending this is their final view of the ship. The deck's tilt grows undeniable. Deck chairs begin sliding slowly toward the port side. A steward scrambles to stop them, his polished shoes slipping on the incline. Nearby, a man opens his pocket, watch 12:45 a.m. He remarks that the drill is running late if they hope to resume sleeping tonight. His wife clutches his arm as her heels skid slightly on the deck. Thomas Andrews moves through the crowd, his face grave. He urges people toward the remaining lifeboats with quiet intensity. "You must get in at once," he tells a hesitant woman. She finally allows herself to be handed down into Lifeboat 9. Andrews does not mention that the ship has maybe an hour left. His jacket sleeve brushes against wet paint on the lifeboat, David, a mark that will remain visible underwater for decades.
In the wireless room, Harold Bride helps Phillips send distress calls. The Carpathia responds she is 58 miles away and coming fast. Other ships answer too, but none are close enough the Titanic will sink. The Californian sits just 10 miles off, her wireless operator already asleep. Bride's fingers cramp from continuous transmission, but he keeps working. The blue spark of the machine reflects in his wide eyes. Back on deck, the forward tilt becomes steep enough to make walking difficult. Passengers heading aft must lean backward like climbers. A group of men help women navigate the slope, their evening shoes offering little traction. Someone jokes that they should have worn golfing spikes. The laughter sounds forced now. The stars remain bright, but the ship's bow lights dip closer to the waterline. Lifeboat 2 launches with only 18 people aboard, mostly crew members, ordered to man the oars. A woman protests being separated from her husband until
An officer lies smoothly. The men follow in the next boats. As the lifeboat descends, its occupants see the truth. Most remaining boats are already lowered or unreachable on the tilting deck. The woman begins to cry quietly. The ship's designer continues his rounds, urging people toward the stern. Andrew's voice stays calm but insistent. He helps a steward distribute blankets to those waiting near collapsible lifeboats. His pocket watch shows 1:15 a.m. when he pauses to wipe his forehead, the exact time he himself privately estimated the Titanic would sink. The deck shudders slightly underfoot as more compartments flood. In the gymnasium, 2 first-class passengers ride the mechanical horses despite the growing angle. The instructor encourages them, joking about getting their money's worth. The electric camel operates until the power flickers minutes later. The riders dismount awkwardly as the floor tilts, finally acknowledging this might be more serious than they thought. The band plays on, though some musicians' fingers must be numb with cold. Their breath comes faster now between notes. Survivors will disagree on the final song. Some say Autumn lingered longest. Others insist it was Nearer, My God, Thee. Whatever the tune, its melody drifts across the water as the last lifeboats row away. Collapsible D launches at 2:05 a.m. with 44 people crammed aboard the last boat successfully lowered. Officer Lightoller stands waist-deep in freezing water to load it properly. The ship's forward tilt approaches 45 degrees now, making further launches impossible. Those left aboard cluster near the stern, their numbers swelling as people retreat from rising water below. A young couple from second class holds hands. Tonight, we have walked the Titanic's final peaceful hours as if we were there, feeling the crisp air, hearing the waltzes, sharing the hopes of passengers unaware of what the night would bring. Those ordinary moments now seem extraordinary. A child's laughter in the corridor, a baker kneading dough, couples whispering on deck. They remind us how quickly the mundane can become precious. As survivors would later say, the ship's true tragedy was not just its sinking, but how beautifully normal everything felt until the very end. So tonight, as you drift to sleep, let these quiet hours remind you history's most profound lessons often whisper before they vanish.